Somewhere between the last thought of the day and the first breath of sleep, history loosens its grip. It stops standing upright. It sits down beside you. This is not the loud kind of history with banners and dates and important men posing for portraits. This is the quieter version, the one that lived in routine, in repetition, in people whose names were never written down because nothing about them seemed special at the time, and yet without them, nothing worked. Late-night history prefers these people, the ones who moved through streets before anyone was awake, the ones whose work left no monuments behind, only habits, only sounds, only the faint sense that someone had already been there before you arrived. If you listen closely enough, the night still remembers them. Britain once ran on small jobs done very early and very faithfully, jobs that sound fictional now because the world has decided they are unnecessary. Not wrong, just unnecessary. The kind of work that did not announce itself, it simply happened. Windows were tapped, bottles were placed, fires were fed, lights were turned on, and by the time most people opened their eyes, the system was already in motion. There is a quiet irony in how dependable these lives were. No backup systems, no automation, no polite error messages, just human beings showing up because someone depended on them. Miss one morning and a household felt it. Miss too many and everything collapsed. It was a fragile arrangement held together by memory and mutual expectation. And somehow it worked. The modern mind likes efficiency. It prefers silence without witnesses, convenience without contact. The old system was slower, wetter, colder, and mildly ridiculous in places. Paying someone to wake you up by tapping your window with a stick is not an idea that survived focus groups. But it fed families. It built rhythms. It gave meaning to hours most people never saw. This world did not disappear in a single moment. It faded. One clock at a time, one machine at a time. One decision that made sense on paper. Progress did not destroy it. Progress simply stopped needing it. Late-night history does not mourn this. It notices it. The way a room feels different after someone leaves. Nothing is broken, nothing is wrong, but something is missing. And the night remembers what it was. After that quiet shift settled into place, the night did not end. It simply handed responsibility to someone else. Long before factories hummed or streets filled with footsteps, there was already movement. A figure stepping carefully along stone paths, slick with damp, breath visible, hands stiff from cold. Morning did not arrive on its own, it was delivered. This was the knocker-upper, a job that sounds like a joke until you imagine missing work once and realizing there would be no second chance. No polite warning, no understanding manager, just hunger waiting patiently at home. So people paid a few coins each week to be woken by a human being who did not sleep through alarms because they were the alarm. She did not knock at doors. Doors made too much noise. She tapped windows with a long pole, sometimes bamboo, sometimes wood, 3 sharp taps, enough to wake the right person without waking the entire street. Precision mattered. Too soft, and someone overslept. Too loud, and neighbors complained. There was no manual, only memory and habit shaped by a repetition. The irony is easy to miss. An entire industrial system depended on someone who walked alone in the dark, trusting that everyone else would do their part. She trusted people to pay, they trusted her to show up. No contracts, no receipts. Just a shared understanding that morning was not optional. This work shaped lives in ways that never made it into history books. Children were educated because someone tapped glass at the right moment. Rent was paid because sleep did not win that day. Entire streets rose together because one person remembered who needed waking and when. It was community enforced by routine rather than sentiment. From a modern distance, it seems inefficient. Paying another person to wake you feels unnecessary when a phone can scream on command. Yet phones fail. Batteries die. People sleep through alarms. The knocker-upper rarely did. There is something quietly humorous about that. A system built on human inconvenience proved more reliable than early machines built for convenience. Eventually, cheap alarm clocks arrived. Metal replaced memory. Morning became a private affair. Streets grew quieter. The tapping stopped. No farewell, no ceremony, just fewer payments and longer sleep. Late-night history does not frame this as loss or progress. It simply observes the transition. One less figure moving through darkness, one less job that required knowing other people well enough to keep their lives running. The city still wakes up. It just does not need anyone to knock anymore. After the tapping faded and the pole was lowered for the last time, the rhythm it supported did not disappear immediately. It lingered in bodies, in habits, in the quiet tension that lived inside people who learned early that sleep was not a private indulgence, but a calculated risk. Life before electronic alarms was not softer, it was sharper. Morning carried consequences. Work began early because light was precious and machines did not wait. Mills opened their doors while the sky was still undecided. Foundries breathed heat into cold streets long before breakfast existed as a concept. Being late was not an inconvenience. It was a small disaster. Wages were docked, names were noted, patterns were observed. Too many mistakes, and the job vanished. When the job vanished, everything else followed. There was no buffer built into the system, no sick days in the modern sense, no safety net stretched beneath a missed shift. Hunger was not dramatic, it was practical. It arrived quietly and stayed. Rent did not pause. Children did not eat less because their parents overslept. This is why waking up mattered so much. This is why paying someone to knock on a window made sense. The fear of being late was not loud. It did not shout. It pressed gently but constantly. It shaped evenings. People went to bed early not because they were tired, but because uncertainty demanded it. Candlelight was measured. Conversations ended abruptly. Nights were shortened on purpose. You did not stay up wondering who you were. You stayed up wondering if you could afford to sleep another minute. The knocker-upper existed because trust in oneself was unreliable at 2 a.m. Bodies betray intentions. Minds make promises they cannot keep once darkness deepens. People knew this about themselves. That knowledge was not philosophical. It was practical. So they outsourced waking to someone who could not afford to fail, someone whose entire livelihood depended on being awake while others slept. It is easy to romanticize this arrangement from a distance. The quiet streets, the sense of shared effort. But living inside it felt different. Every sound at night mattered. A cart passing too late, a dog barking without reason, rain hitting the window too softly to be sure. These things were noticed, they were interpreted. The mind rehearsed the morning before it arrived. Time itself felt heavier then, not measured in notifications or schedules stored in pockets. It lived on walls, in factory whistles, in church bells that marked hours whether you agreed or not. Personal time did not exist in the way we understand it now. You did not decide when your day started. The system decided and you adapted. This made mornings communal by force rather than choice. Streets filled at the same moments, doors opened together, footsteps merged into a single sound, moving toward work. There was comfort in this, but also surveillance. Everyone noticed who arrived late. Everyone noticed who disappeared. Absence was visible. The arrival of affordable alarm clocks did not immediately remove this pressure. Early clocks were unreliable, springs weakened, bells failed. Owners slept through them, people still hedged their bets. They set alarms and paid the knocker. Redundancy existed before the word became fashionable. It was built from fear rather than efficiency. Eventually, the machines improved. Trust shifted slowly from people to objects. Waking became private. Failure became personal rather than communal. If you overslept, it was your fault alone. No one walked past your window in the dark, carrying responsibility for your livelihood. This felt freeing. It also felt isolating. Something subtle changed with that shift. Fear did not disappear. It moved inward. Instead of worrying whether someone would show up, you worried whether you would hear the sound. The anxiety remained but lost its social shape. You no longer paid for reassurance. You bought it once in metal and glass and hoped it lasted. Late-night history notices how logical all of this was. None of these systems were designed to be cruel. They were designed to function. They did what they needed to do with the tools available. When better tools arrived, they were accepted without ceremony. No one held a meeting to mourn the knocker-upper. No one wrote a farewell notice. The job simply stopped making sense. But for a long time, it made perfect sense. It fed families. It organized streets. It synchronized lives. The fear of being late was not weakness, it was awareness. A clear understanding that survival depended on showing up when expected. From a modern bed, the idea feels distant. You set multiple alarms. You trust devices. You blame yourself if you fail. You rarely consider the chain of consequences beyond mild embarrassment. The system absorbs your mistake. Before alarms learned to speak, the system did not absorb anything. It remembered, and so did the people inside it. The streets were never empty in the way memory pretends they were. They were simply quiet enough for smaller sounds to matter. Before engines dominated the morning and voices arrived in crowds, there was a softer rhythm already in motion, a low electric hum moving slowly down narrow roads. Glass touching glass, a pause at each doorstep that meant someone had noticed you still lived there. The milkman did not arrive dramatically. He arrived repeatedly. That was the point. Day after day, the same streets, the same corners, the same doors that looked identical until you learned which ones wanted 2 bottles and which ones wanted none today because someone was away, or unwell, or simply tired of milk for a while. The job was not about dairy. It was about consistency, delivered at walking speed. Milk floats moved gently because they had to, not out of courtesy but necessity. Too much noise and people complained. Too little care and bottles broke. Speed was never the goal, accuracy was. A float designed for patience rather than power. Batteries charged overnight. Routes memorized rather than calculated. The whole system favored familiarity over efficiency. In the modern sense, there was a quiet humor in how advanced these vehicles were for their time. Britain had electric transport on residential streets long before it became fashionable again. Not because of environmental concern, because waking people too early was bad for business. Progress arrived wearing practical shoes and no slogans. The milkman learned houses the way others learned faces. He knew which doorsteps were slippery in winter, which gates squeaked, which dogs barked at nothing, and which barked only when something was wrong. He noticed changes without being invited to notice: a bottle left untouched too long, curtains that did not move for days, notes tucked under empties written in hurried handwriting, asking for just one today or none at all. These details mattered. They formed a quiet map of community health long before anyone called it that. When bottles piled up, it meant absence, sometimes harmless, sometimes not. The milkman knocked when needed. He asked neighbors. He alerted someone who could check. Lives were quietly preserved by noticing milk that did not disappear. This responsibility was not written into contracts. It emerged from repetition, from the strange closeness that comes from showing up every day without demanding attention. People talked to the milkman because he was safe. He passed through lives without staying. He knew personal things without being personal. Payment was left in bottles. Coins clinked softly under glass. Envelopes appeared with exact change and occasional notes about holidays or hospital visits. There was trust on both sides. The milk would come, the money would be there. If it was not, no one panicked immediately. Tomorrow would clarify. The hours were unforgiving. Work began before most people believed the day existed. Cold was accepted as part of the uniform. Knees ached from constant hopping on and off the float. Backs learned the shape of crates. None of this was glamorous. That is part of why it worked. Children remember milkmen differently, as fixtures, as background characters who seemed to exist before memory began. Someone who waved, someone who whistled, someone whose name you learned much later when you realized he was a person and not a feature of the street, like the postbox. There is something quietly unsettling about how central this job was and how easily it disappeared. Refrigerators improved, supermarkets expanded, plastic replaced glass. Convenience became centralized. Milk moved from doorsteps to aisles under bright lights, where no one noticed who was missing. The disappearance was gradual enough to avoid alarm. Fewer houses ordered, routes shortened, floats retired. The sound of bottles became occasional rather than expected. People adjusted without marking the change. The morning still arrived. Breakfast still happened. Nothing obvious broke. But something shifted. Not efficiency, visibility. The milkman saw people without needing to speak to them. The new system did not see anyone. It delivered abundance without awareness. You could vanish quietly, and no one noticed until something larger failed. Late-night history does not suggest returning to this system. It understands why it ended. Carrying milk by hand is not a dream anyone wants revived, but it notices what the job carried alongside bottles: recognition, pattern, the knowledge that someone passed your house every morning and expected it to be there. There is gentle irony in how modern life chases connection through devices while discarding jobs that created it accidentally. The milkman did not schedule check-ins. He did not host community events. He simply showed up. And by doing so, he stitched streets together with small, repeated acts. When the floats vanished, the mornings grew quieter in a different way. Not the quiet of anticipation, but the quiet of absence. The city still woke. It just did not do so through shared ritual. Somewhere in memory, a float is still humming. Bottles still touch. A man still pauses at your door. Because that is what he does. The night remembers him even if the street no longer does. After the milk float drifted out of memory, the street did not fall silent. Another sound waited its turn. Not a hum or a clink, but a voice, carried low and long so it could bend around corners and slip through half-open windows. A call that meant someone was coming who dealt in what you no longer wanted but were not quite ready to throw away. The rag and bone man moved at the pace of patience. A horse pulled the cart because speed would have ruined everything. This work depended on being noticed slowly, on giving people time to remember what was hiding under the stairs or at the back of cupboards. Time to decide that today was finally the day to let something go. He did not sell. He exchanged. That difference mattered. Coins changed hands, but so did small wonders. Balloons for children. A goldfish in a plastic bag that would live just long enough to be remembered forever. The transaction made no sense on paper. It worked perfectly in practice. From the outside, the cart looked like chaos. Bent metal, bundles of cloth, furniture missing parts, things whose original purpose had already been forgotten. From the inside, it was inventory, sorted by weight, by material, by what could still be turned into something else. Rags were not rubbish. They were raw material, waiting for the next stage. Bones went to glue factories. Cloth went to be shredded and reborn. Metal found its way back into furnaces. Nothing was sentimental here, and yet everything was personal. Each item came from a home. Each bundle carried a small history that no one needed to hear spoken aloud. The rag and bone man knew streets, the way others knew schedules. He knew which houses saved things, which ones threw everything away without thinking, which families had fallen on hard times and would suddenly appear with more than usual. This was not gossip. It was awareness, built from repetition. Children experienced this job differently. For them, it was magic disguised as labor. The sudden appearance of balloons tied to a cart, the thrill of turning broken objects into living things that swam or floated. Adults understood the bargain better. Children understood the feeling. There was quiet humor in the system. A man shouting about old iron while offering goldfish felt absurd even then. Nobody questioned it. Absurdity was part of the charm. It softened the reality that this was a business built on waste and necessity. Territory mattered. Streets belonged to individuals, not by law but by custom. You did not cross into another man area unless invited. Disputes were rare because everyone understood what was at stake. A cart overturned was not drama. It was lost income. A frightened horse, a ruined day. The horse was a partner, not a tool. Old mares often, calm ones. Animals who knew the route so well, they stopped without instruction. When the man grew distracted talking to a customer, the horse waited or moved on as needed. Experience lived in muscle and habit on both sides of the reins. This job required an eye, not for beauty but for value. A trained glance could tell wool from something that would disintegrate, solid metal from decorative nonsense. The difference between profit and a wasted journey often came down to a single decision made in seconds on a doorstep. Negotiation was expected. Everyone played their part. People wanted to feel they had won. The rag and bone man wanted them to feel that way too. Offering a balloon to a child was not generosity. It was strategy. The next time the cupboard was cleared, the good things would be saved for him. Money was decent when the day went well. Not luxurious, reliable. Enough to keep food on the table and the horse fed, and a little aside for repairs. This was not survival at the edge. It was work that demanded knowledge and consistency. There was social power in this role. The rag and bone man carried news, not officially, not intentionally. Stories moved with him. Who was moving? Who had lost work? Who had more to sell than usual? Information traveled in the gaps between transactions. Stopping at a pub was part of the route, not indulgence. Rest for the horse, exchange for the man. News gathered over a pint mattered as much as anything collected in the cart. It told him where to go next, who might be ready to part with larger things. Over time, the city changed around him. Councils organized rubbish collection, trucks replaced carts, efficiency replaced patience. Waste became something you removed quickly rather than circulated slowly. The need for a middle figure faded. The rag and bone man did not vanish overnight. Fewer houses responded, fewer children ran out. The call echoed a little longer before doors opened. Eventually it echoed back empty. What disappeared was not just a job, but a way of thinking about objects. Nothing was simply trash. Everything had a second use somewhere else, if you knew how to look. The modern system prefers finality. Once something is gone, it is gone. Late-night history notices the shift without judgment. Centralized waste removal is cleaner, faster, less romantic. It solves problems the old system could not, but it also removes the human layer that once sat between excess and reuse. The rag and bone man knew your cupboards, not literally, but close enough. He knew the rhythm of accumulation and release. He understood that people do not discard things all at once. They need time, permission. A voice outside calling that now would be acceptable. There is something quietly unsettling about how efficient we have become at removing what we no longer want. Nothing asks questions anymore. Nothing waits. Nothing offers a balloon to soften the moment. Somewhere in memory, a cart still creaks. A horse still waits. A child still runs inside, shouting that he is coming. The city does not need him now, but the night remembers the shape of his work. After the cart rolled away and the street learned to manage its own leftovers, work continued indoors. Factories swallowed people. Offices arranged them into rows. The noise changed, but the pressure remained. Hands moved faster than thoughts. Time thickened. And somewhere between the first hour of labor and the slow ache that settled into shoulders and wrists, another sound appeared. Wheels on linoleum, cups touching saucers, a pause that felt earned. The tea lady did not arrive like a supervisor. She arrived like permission. The trolley moved slowly enough to be noticed, but not so slowly that it disrupted anything important. It carried warmth rather than authority. Steam rose quietly. Biscuits rattled in tins. The day bent slightly around her presence. This was not a small role. It only looked that way. In factories and offices where repetition ruled and individuality was trimmed down to efficiency, the tea lady restored something human without announcing it. She did not ask how you were feeling in a way that required an answer. She already knew. She knew because she watched. Because she showed up 3 times a day and learned patterns the way others learned spreadsheets. Who took sugar? Who stopped taking sugar suddenly? Who drank nothing and stared at the cup anyway? These details accumulated. They told stories, without asking to be told. The trolley itself was a study in order, cups arranged so they would not chip, milk placed where it would not spill, sugar bowls filled to the right level, biscuits stacked so they survived the journey. This was logistics disguised as comfort, a system refined through years of trial and mild disaster. The hours were long, the lifting repetitive, the smile expected. None of this was accidental. The tea lady worked before most people arrived. Water boiled in large urns that demanded respect. One wrong movement and the day ended badly. Preparation mattered. Precision mattered. Mood mattered most of all. There was a quiet irony in how much emotional labor lived inside such a simple task. People talked to the tea lady because she was safe. She was not management. She was not competition. She moved between departments without belonging to any of them. Secrets traveled with her without being carried. She heard things others pretended not to notice. Arguments whispered near filing cabinets. Worries spoken into cups rather than to colleagues. She learned which desks needed an extra biscuit without explanation. She learned when to linger and when to move on. The tea break itself was a ritual disguised as efficiency. Officially, it existed to maintain productivity. Unofficially, it kept people from unraveling. 10 minutes with a warm cup reset the nervous system long before anyone used that phrase. The body remembered comfort, even when the mind resisted it. There is gentle humor in how modern workplaces attempt to recreate this with machines. Coffee pods, automated dispensers, break rooms with inspirational posters, and silence thick enough to taste. The tea arrived, but the moment did not. Something essential had been removed. In the middle of the 20th century, the tea lady was often the emotional center of a workplace. She knew birthdays. She knew whose children were ill. She knew who needed quiet and who needed conversation. This knowledge was never written down. It lived in habit and observation. Respect for this role grew slowly. Before the war, it was often dismissed as service. After the war, it became something else. Women who had worked long shifts in factories returned to offices that needed stability. The tea lady provided it. She held morale together with cups and attention. There was hierarchy even here. Different rounds required different approaches. Early shifts wanted strong tea and speed. Office pools wanted care and consistency. Late afternoon demanded patience. By then, everyone was tired, and the smallest kindness landed hardest. The trolley marked time more reliably than clocks. People could tell the hour by the sound of wheels in the corridor. When the tea lady did not arrive on time, something felt wrong. The building noticed her absence, even if it could not articulate why. Her work required memory more than strength. Remembering preferences, remembering names, remembering when someone stopped talking as much. This memory built trust. People felt seen without being examined. That balance is rare. Payment for this role was modest. Recognition was informal. A thank you here, a card at retirement, perhaps a collection for a gift. The value of the work far exceeded the wage, but that was rarely acknowledged directly. It did not need to be. The proof arrived every day in small ways. When vending machines replaced trolleys, the change felt logical. Faster, cheaper, cleaner, cups dispensed without conversation, breaks shortened. People returned to desks without having spoken a word. Productivity did not collapse, something else did. The loss was subtle, not dramatic enough to protest. No petitions formed, no farewell gatherings filled the corridors. The trolley simply stopped coming. People adjusted. They always do. Late-night history notices this adjustment. It notices how easily systems accept the removal of human roles once they are labeled inefficient. It also notices what those roles were carrying quietly all along. The tea lady did not fix problems. She did not intervene. She did not change policy. She did something smaller and more durable. She noticed, She acknowledged. She created moments where work loosened its grip just enough for people to breathe. There is something unsettling about how much depended on that. Entire workplaces stabilized by a woman pushing a trolley and remembering how you took your tea. Entire days salvaged by a biscuit placed gently on a saucer without comment. When the roll disappeared, the warmth did not vanish completely. People adapted. They brought their own mugs. They made their own drinks. They stared at screens while machines hummed. Efficiency returned to its proper shape, but the quiet authority left with her, the kind that came from knowing without judging, from caring without documenting, from being present without requiring attention. Somewhere in memory, a trolley still rattles softly. Cups still clink. A voice still says, "Here you go, love," without expecting anything back. The night remembers that sound. Even if the building no longer does, the trolley has rolled away. The cups are cooling on desks. The building exhales and settles back into work. Somewhere deeper inside the city, another room has been awake all along. No windows, no view of weather, just light panels, cords, and a steady hum that never quite fades. This is where voices come to be connected. Not heard, connected. The telephone exchange does not look impressive, at least not in the way progress later decided impressive should look. It is a wall, a very large wall, holes arranged in careful order, lights blinking without emotion, cables waiting for hands that know exactly where to go before the mind finishes thinking. This is not speed-driven work. It is accuracy under pressure. The operators sit in rows, mostly women, always listening, always ready. Headsets pressed close, posture upright, movements economical, every gesture practiced until it becomes invisible. When the light flashes, the hand moves. When the number is spoken, the cable follows. A connection forms, and two distant lives begin to overlap for a moment. They are called voices, but rarely remembered as people. The caller hears a calm phrase and then silence. The work continues. The voice belongs to everyone and to no one at the same time. That is part of the job. Presence without identity. Help without recognition. Training is long and unforgiving. You learn geography without maps. Numbers live in physical space on the board. Whitehall sits here. Camden lives there. Your hands know this before your thoughts do. Mistakes are not dramatic. They are costly. A wrong connection sends words into the wrong ears. Privacy is fragile here. There are rules, so many rules. Do not comment. Do not react. Do not acknowledge what you hear. You may connect joy. You may connect grief. You may connect secrets that will ruin lives if spoken aloud. None of it belongs to you. The job requires hearing without holding. This creates a strange closeness to the city. Operators learn its rhythms. Mornings rush, afternoons slow, evenings change tone, nights bring the unexpected. Lonely calls, drunk calls, calls that hesitate before speaking. The exchange hears the city breathe. Shifts rotate because the system never sleeps. 1 week mornings, the next nights. Walking home as others wake. Walking to work as others return from evenings out. Time blurs. Life arranges itself around the board. There is irony here. A job built on communication requires silence from the people doing it. Operators are discouraged from forming attachments. Historically, they were expected to be unmarried. Engagement rings hidden. Personal lives minimized. The thinking was simple. Distraction interferes with clarity. The system must come first. Even bodies were evaluated for suitability. Arms had to reach across the full board. Too short and you were out. Not a judgment, a measurement. The machine dictated the human shape required to serve it. Despite this, there was humanity everywhere. It slipped through anyway. A pause held a fraction longer than required. A tone softened slightly when a voice trembled. A rule bent quietly at night when loneliness reached across the line and asked for nothing more than a moment of sound. Late-night history lingers on these moments, not the official ones. The unofficial kindness that never made it into manuals, the operator who stayed on the line a little longer than allowed, the one who asked, "Are you all right?" even though she was trained not to. These were not acts of rebellion. They were reflexes. The work took a physical toll. Arms ached, ears rang, eyes strained under constant light. Concentration never relaxed. There was no wandering of thought. Every second required readiness. Fatigue was not an excuse. The board did not slow because you were tired. Pay was steady but modest. Pride came from competence rather than reward. You knew you mattered because nothing worked without you. The city functioned through your hands. That knowledge stayed quiet. It had to. Technology changed without asking permission. Automatic exchanges arrived. Buttons replaced voices. Direct dialing removed the human middle layer. Efficiency celebrated itself. Lines connected faster. Errors decreased. Costs dropped. The future arrived on schedule. The last manual exchange closed with ceremony. Speeches, applause, a final call, a final cable removed. Some operators had spent decades at the board. Millions of connections passed through their hands. When the lights went dark, they walked out carrying nothing that proved what they had done. Progress did not pause to absorb them. New systems required fewer people. Skills became obsolete overnight. The voice that once answered "Number please" was replaced by a tone. Clear, impersonal, reliable. From the outside, this looked like improvement, and in many ways it was. Calls became private, faster, more efficient. No one listened unless invited. No one overheard by accident. Privacy improved. Control shifted. But something else faded. The sense that communication was a shared human act, that reaching someone required cooperation beyond machines, that a voice on the other end belonged to someone who knew the weight of that connection. Late-night history does not argue against automation. It understands why it happened. It simply notices what was removed along with the cables, the invisible layer of human attention, the knowledge that someone else was awake when you called, someone whose job it was to help your words find their destination. Today, calls connect without ceremony. Voices appear instantly. Silence follows when they end. No one remembers the exchange. No one thanks the system. That is the point. But there was a time when every call passed through human hands, when connection required memory, when voices traveled through a room full of people who never met the ones they served. Somewhere in memory, the lights still blink. A hand still moves before the thought finishes. A calm voice still says, "Number, please." The city still speaks. It just no longer needs anyone to listen for it. When the voices in the switchboard room finally fell silent and the cables learned to connect themselves, the city did not pause. It simply shifted its weight. People still needed to move. Not in straight lines, not efficiently, but together. And for that, the bus waited. It waited at the curb with its engine breathing low and steady, lights glowing like a promise that someone would get you home. The bus did not ask who you were or where you were going. It only asked that you climb aboard and trust the rhythm. 2 bells rang, the door closed, and the city began to slide past the windows in fragments. Standing between the stillness of the street and the motion of the road was the conductor, not the driver. The conductor lived among the passengers, on the moving floor, on the open platform, one hand steady against a rail, the other busy with coins and tickets and small decisions that kept order from dissolving into noise. This was not simply a job of selling tickets, it was a job of balance in every sense. Physical balance first, standing upright on a vehicle that lurched and leaned and stopped without warning. Feet learned the language of momentum, knees bent instinctively, muscles adjusted before thought arrived. You could always spot a new conductor by the way they gripped the rail too tightly. Then there was social balance, knowing when to be firm, when to be patient, when to look the other way. A bus is a temporary village built out of strangers. People bring their moods with them, their tiredness, their arguments from home, their hopes from work. All of it boards the bus at once. The conductor stood in the middle of this and made it work. The uniform mattered, not for decoration but for authority. A jacket that signaled you were not just another passenger, a cap that made you visible in a crowd. The ticket machine strapped across the chest like a badge of responsibility. Heavy, mechanical, honest. Every ticket punched was audible proof that the system was functioning. Clip, clip, clip. The sound followed the conductor through the aisle. It was not aggressive, it was rhythmic, reassuring. It told passengers that someone was in charge of the chaos, that fares were being collected, that rules existed and would be enforced gently but firmly. Money passed hand to hand, coins warm from pockets, exact change offered with pride. The conductor sorted by touch without looking. Years of practice turned fingers into scales. This coin, that coin. No mistakes, no delay. A pause here slowed the entire bus. The conductor knew the route the way operators knew the switchboard, not as a list of stops, but as a living pattern. Which corners filled quickly, which stops produced school children in waves, which elderly passengers needed time to climb the stairs, which drunk would try to argue about the fare again tonight. Names were not always known, faces were. Regulars became landmarks. The woman with the shopping trolley who always boarded at the same time. The man who rode 2 stops every morning and nodded without speaking. The child who counted tickets like treasure. These people belonged to the route. There was a language of bells shared between conductor and driver. 1 bell to stop, 2 to move. 3 sharp rings meant trouble, an emergency, a sudden decision required now. No words were needed. Sound traveled faster. This language carried responsibility. Ring too late and someone fell trying to board. Ring too early and someone was left behind running after the bus with embarrassment clinging to their coat. Timing mattered. The conductor watched the pavement more than the passengers. Watched hands on rails, watched feet hesitate. The open platform at the back of the bus was a particular test. Standing there felt exhilarating and dangerous. Wind pulled at clothing. The street rushed past inches away. People jumped on late, people jumped off early. The conductor learned when to allow it and when to shut it down. One mistake stayed with you forever. There were moments of quiet heroism no one recorded. A mother with a pram guided gently into space. A confused visitor told which stop to take. A drunk allowed to ride home without payment because it was safer that way. Rules bent without breaking. Teenagers tested boundaries, Loud, restless, trying to impress each other, the conductor handled them with practiced neutrality, not a lecture, not a threat, just a look that said, "I have seen worse than you, and I am still here." The hours were long, early mornings, late evenings, standing for most of it. The ticket machine grew heavier as the day wore on. Shoulders ached, feet burned. The sway of the bus followed you even after stepping off. You walked home, still adjusting for movement that was no longer there. Pay was steady but unremarkable. Pride came from competence, from knowing the route ran smoothly because you were there, from the quiet respect of regular passengers who noticed when you were off shift. The bus felt different without you. During the war, the job changed shape. Women stepped into roles once held by men. The name Clippy followed them from the sound of the machine. Clip, clip, clip. The city adjusted. The buses ran. After the war, many women stayed, proving daily that the job was not about strength, but awareness. There was resistance at first. There always is. Some thought women could not handle crowds, could not manage conflict, could not stand all day on a moving vehicle. Reality corrected them quietly, one route at a time. For decades, the conductor was part of the city bloodstream, moving people from home to work to home again, watching lives pass in fragments, seeing children grow taller, seeing workers age, seeing fashions change. The bus carried time as much as people. Then efficiency arrived wearing a practical face. One-person operation. The driver would do everything: sell tickets, announce stops, manage doors. Fewer wages to pay, fewer bodies to organize. The logic was flawless on paper. Buses changed. Doors moved to the front. Platforms closed. Machines replaced human judgment. Passengers boarded in single file, paid at the door, took seats without conversation. The conductor vanished without ceremony. At first, the loss felt minor. Tickets were still sold. Routes still ran. People still arrived. Nothing collapsed. Progress rarely does that. It rearranges quietly. But something thinned out. The bus became transportation rather than experience. Questions went unanswered. Prams struggled. Teenagers grew louder. No one stood between the crowd and the road. The driver focused forward. The passengers turned inward. Late-night history notices this shift without accusation. One-person operation makes sense. It saves money, it reduces complexity, it fits a faster world, but it also removes a human buffer. Someone whose job was to watch the space between people, to notice imbalance before it became trouble, to act before policy needed to. The conductor did not make speeches, did not improve infrastructure, did not change routes. They did something smaller and more fragile. They held the moment together while the bus moved. When the roll disappeared, the bus kept going. Of course it did. Cities adapt. They always have. Still, there are moments late at night when an old bus seems fuller than it should. When the echo of coins feels louder than the engine. When two bells ring in memory even though no one is there to ring them. The night remembers the conductor, standing steady on a moving floor, watching the edge of the platform, holding a city together one ticket at a time. The bus has passed, the bells have faded into memory, the city exhales again and prepares for something heavier. Not movement this time, stillness. Cold that settles rather than travels. The kind of cold that waits patiently outside brick walls and seeps inward whether invited or not. Before radiators hummed and switches obeyed fingers without resistance, warmth arrived differently. It arrived with weight. The coalman did not move quietly. He could not. His work announced itself with boots on stone and the dull thud of sacks lowered carefully to avoid tearing. Streets knew when he was coming, not by sight, but by sound and by smell. Coal dust carried ahead of him like a warning and a promise at the same time. This was a job shaped by winter. Summer slowed it but never erased it. Coal was stored, counted, anticipated. Families watched their bins the way others watched clocks. Too much meant waste of money and space. Too little meant nights spent fully dressed near a weak fire, pretending it was enough. The coalman learned houses by their appetite for heat. Big families burned faster. Old houses leaked warmth through cracks no one could afford to fix. Elderly tenants rationed carefully and ordered smaller loads more often. Each delivery told a story before a word was spoken. The sacks were heavy in a way that did not forgive. 100 pounds was common, sometimes more. They were lifted onto shoulders already shaped by repetition. Not strong in the way posters celebrate, strong in the way joints learn to tolerate pain without announcing it. The coalman moved carefully, because one mistake followed you home for weeks. Staircases were the real test. Narrow, steep, built before anyone imagined carrying sacks of fuel down them daily. The coalman descended slowly into basements where light barely reached and air smelled permanently of smoke and damp. There was no applause here, only gravity and caution. Coal cellars were rarely clean. Dust layered everything. Hands turned black immediately. Clothes followed. Washing never quite removed it. Coal lived under fingernails and in skin creases. It followed the worker into pubs and kitchens and beds. The job did not end when the sack was emptied. There was pride here, though it rarely spoke loudly. A fire lit because you carried fuel to that house. Children slept warm. Meals cooked, water boiled. Comfort existed because someone accepted the weight and the mess. The coalman understood this, even if no one said it aloud. Payment varied. Some paid promptly, others delayed until payday. The coalman kept mental notes. Who could be trusted? Who needed reminding? Who was embarrassed to admit they needed credit? These decisions were not moral judgments. They were calculations shaped by survival. There was humor too, dark and dry. Jokes about black lungs and white collars, about how everyone wanted warmth, but no one wanted the work that produced it, about how progress would surely arrive soon and remove the need for all this carrying. Progress always arrives soon in conversation. Horses pulled carts before engines took over. Old animals with steady temperaments. They stopped where expected. They waited without complaint. The coalman spoke to them more than to people some days. A quiet partnership formed by shared routine. The cart itself was organized chaos. Sacks stacked to prevent collapse, tools hung within reach, shovels worn smooth by use. Everything had a place because searching wasted strength that could not be spared. Efficiency here was physical, not digital. Deliveries followed seasons rather than schedules. Cold snaps triggered sudden demand. Orders arrived too late. Panic crept in. The coalman worked longer days then, darkness at both ends, breath visible, fingers numb. The fire inside homes burned brighter, while the one inside the worker dimmed. There was no illusion about longevity. This was not a job for a lifetime. Bodies wore out, knees failed, backs curved, lungs filled slowly with something heavier than air. Many coalmen hoped their sons would do something else, something cleaner, something lighter. Children watched deliveries with mixed feelings: relief that warmth would come, guilt at the sight of effort, fascination with the blackness that transformed a man into a moving shadow. Some helped by opening doors and holding bins steady. Others hid, unsure what to say. Inside homes, the coalman rarely lingered. Work happened quickly. Efficiency protected dignity on both sides. No one wanted extended conversation while someone stood breathing heavily in their hallway. A nod, a thank you. Sometimes tea offered, sometimes refused to keep moving. The coalman learned when to accept kindness and when to decline. Tea delayed the next delivery, but refusing too often felt rude. Balance mattered, like everything else in this job. Coal shaped domestic life in ways later generations forget. Fires demanded attention, ashes removed, grates cleaned, chimneys swept. A whole network of labor existed around one material: coalmen, chimney sweeps, fire builders, all synchronized by cold weather and necessity. The coalman occupied a strange social position, essential yet overlooked. Everyone needed him. Few wanted to be him. He moved between classes, carrying the same product into every home. Warmth did not discriminate. Dust did. Late-night history lingers on this contradiction. A society warmed by people it preferred not to notice. Comfort delivered by those excluded from its image of itself. The coalman understood this without bitterness. Or perhaps with it tucked away, where it could not slow the work. Technology crept in gradually. Gas lines, electric heaters. Central heating promised warmth without effort. A miracle on paper. Coal deliveries declined slowly enough to allow denial. One less order, one more cancellation. The cart waited longer between stops. The coalman adjusted routes, took on other work, delivered ice in summer, hauled rubbish, whatever kept money moving. Pride bent but did not break. Work was work. Eventually the bins emptied for the last time. Coal cellars repurposed, fireplaces sealed or decorative. The smell of coal smoke faded from streets. The sky lightened, air improved. Progress achieved something real. The coalman did not attend a closing ceremony. No speeches marked the final sack. The job ended quietly, like it had always operated. One less delivery, one less route, one less man carrying weight through winter streets. From a modern distance, it is tempting to romanticize this labor, to imagine it as honest and simple and somehow purer than what followed. Late-night history resists that temptation. The work was hard, the pay uncertain, the toll permanent. No nostalgia changes that. But something did vanish, along with the coal dust. The direct relationship between effort and comfort, the awareness that warmth cost someone something tangible. When heat arrives invisibly through walls, it loses its story. The coalman carried that story physically, sack by sack, step by step. He knew exactly how much effort it took to make a room warm. He felt it in his spine long after the fire died down. Modern systems hide effort behind switches and invoices. Warmth appears clean and silent, efficient. The cost exists but far away. Somewhere else. Someone else. Late-night history notices this shift without blame. Cleaner energy saves lives. Automation saves bodies. The coalman would not argue against it. He would welcome the relief. But the night remembers the weight he carried. The sound of sacks hitting stone. The pause at the door while breath returned. The quiet knowledge that survival depended on physical endurance. Somewhere in memory, a man still walks down a narrow stair with a sack on his shoulder. Dust falls like black snow. A fire waits to be lit. The city sleeps warmer because he does not. The coalman does not ask to be remembered. He never did. He only did the work until the work no longer needed him. And when winter settles late at night and heating hums without effort, the night remembers what it used to cost to feel warm. After the coal was carried inside and the fire was coaxed into life, the work was still not finished. Warmth came with consequences. Smoke rose, soot followed, and somewhere above the ceiling, inside a vertical darkness few ever saw, the cost of comfort waited patiently. The chimney sweep arrived later, not with sacks this time, but with brushes, rods, and a kind of calm that only comes from knowing the danger is ordinary. His presence meant the house could keep burning without slowly poisoning itself. Cleanliness here was not aesthetic. It was survival, disguised as maintenance. Chimneys were not built for convenience. They were built for function, and space was rarely generous. Flues narrowed unexpectedly. Bricks jutted out where no one bothered to smooth them. Soot layered everything like a soft threat. The sweep learned these shapes by touch rather than sight. Early sweeps worked with bodies rather than tools. Children were used because adults did not fit. This was not cruelty disguised as tradition. It was architecture dictating labor. Narrow flues demanded small frames. Society accepted this arrangement with the same shrug it offered to many other necessities. Fires needed cleaning. Children were available. The logic was efficient even if it was brutal. Late-night history does not rush through this part. It sits with the discomfort. Children climbed because adults would not. Hands and knees scraped against brick. Soot filled lungs. Darkness pressed close. The job required movement without panic. If you froze, you were stuck. If you panicked, you were lost. Training was simple and unforgiving. You learned by doing, by climbing again and again until fear dulled into routine. The reward was survival and the promise that tomorrow would be much the same. The city burned coal constantly. Chimneys clogged quickly. There was always work. Sweeps carried brushes and scrapers, but also a strange social status, feared and tolerated, needed but avoided, covered in black dust that marked them instantly. They knocked on doors that opened reluctantly. Their presence reminded households that comfort came with filth they preferred not to imagine. Payment was modest, sometimes withheld. Sweeps learned which houses delayed and which paid promptly. They also learned which chimneys were dangerous, which had bends too tight, which owners lied about last cleaning. These details were not written down. They lived in memory and warning, passed quietly between workers. There was dark humor among sweeps, jokes about getting stuck, about coughing black for days, about how people loved clean fires but hated the sight of those who made them possible. Humor was not optional, it was armor. As awareness grew, the use of children became harder to defend. Laws shifted, slowly, resistance followed. Some claimed tradition, others claimed necessity. Change arrived unevenly like smoke itself. Brushes grew longer, rods replaced bodies. But the work remained dangerous. Adult sweeps faced different risks: falling, inhaling soot over decades, collapsing flues, chimney fires triggered by missed spots. The job demanded attention even when repetitive. One lapse could kill you or someone else later. The sweep became a figure of ritual as well as labor, a sign of transition. Moving day, new tenancy, seasonal preparation. People associated him with luck in a half-joking way that revealed discomfort. If you turn danger into symbol, you can look at it longer. Sweeps moved between houses of every class, grand homes and cramped terraces. Fireplaces differed, but soot did not. The job leveled interiors. Black dust cared nothing for taste or status. It coated marble and cracked stone equally. There was intimacy in the work. Sweeps entered private spaces without ceremony. Bedrooms, kitchens, attics. They saw homes stripped of pretense. Furniture moved aside, grates exposed, ash scattered, domestic order temporarily suspended. They learned family rhythms, which houses burned constantly, which rationed heat, which neglected cleaning until disaster nearly struck. This knowledge stayed unspoken. Judgment was not part of the role, completion was. Late-night history notices the strange economy of responsibility here. Householders depended on sweeps to prevent fires, yet often delayed hiring them. Risk was tolerated until it became inconvenient. Then urgency arrived without apology. Technology changed slowly. Mechanical brushes improved, protective masks appeared. Vacuum systems arrived that contained soot rather than redistributing it across rooms and lungs. Progress took pieces of the burden away without removing the job entirely. Central heating altered everything. Fires burned less, chimneys cooled. Some were sealed, others forgotten. Sweeps lost routes the way coalmen lost deliveries. Fewer calls, longer waits. Skills that once guaranteed work now searched for relevance. Modern chimney maintenance became quieter, cleaner, less visible. Machines hummed. Filters caught what lungs once held. Safety improved. Bodies lasted longer. This is not a loss. It is a correction. But something also shifted in perception. Fire became decorative, chimneys aesthetic. The danger receded into abstraction. People forgot that smoke needs somewhere to go. That neglect accumulates invisibly. Old sweeps watched this change with mixed feelings. Relief for their children, unease at being made unnecessary. Pride did not vanish easily. This work had required courage even if no one applauded it. The stereotype lingered longer than the job. Songs, images, soot-faced figures frozen in a time that no longer existed. The reality was less charming, more tired, more dangerous. Late-night history strips away the image and sits with the labor. The physicality of climbing, the grit between teeth, the careful testing of footholds, the moment of daylight at the top of a flue that meant you would get out today. There is something unsettling about how easily societies accept invisible danger when comfort depends on it. Smoke rises quietly, soot settles slowly. Fires burn beautifully until they do not. The sweep lived in that margin. Even now, unused chimneys collapse. Birds nest. Debris falls. Old houses surprise new owners. The past does not fully leave. It waits in structures built for other ways of living. The chimney sweep understood this better than most. He worked inside the bones of buildings. He knew where heat traveled, where risk collected. He saw architecture from the inside out. When machines replaced bodies and safety improved, the job lost its edge. That is a good thing. But the memory remained sharp. Somewhere in the night, a narrow vertical space still exists. Dark, dusty, unseen. The house above glows with warmth and comfort, unaware of what keeps it safe. The sweep does not ask for thanks. He never did. He only climbed where others would not, so the fires could burn without fear. Late-night history remembers that climb, not as nostalgia, as acknowledgement. Cleanliness was never free. It was paid for in soot and silence. And when warmth hums quietly through walls tonight, without smoke or ash. The night remembers the narrow dark where someone once worked so others would never have to. After the chimney was cleared and the danger retreated back into the walls where it belonged, the city resumed its habits. Warmth moved invisibly now. Smoke no longer announced itself. Comfort became quieter and more confident. And as the city learned to hide its risks better, it also learned to hide its helpers. The work did not disappear all at once. It fractured into smaller roles, less dramatic, less dangerous, easier to ignore. Jobs that did not carry sacks or climb flues but still absorbed the friction of daily life. Jobs that existed to smooth moments most people preferred not to notice at all. You met them without greeting them. You depended on them without remembering their names. And when they vanished, you felt the absence without being able to explain why. The public toilet attendant lived inside embarrassment, not the loud kind, the quiet, private kind people carried with them and wanted resolved quickly. The attendant stood between urgency and dignity. Clean floors, paper replaced before panic arrived. A calm presence that said this problem would be handled discreetly. These spaces were not glamorous. They were functional rooms that collected stress. People arrived hurried and uncomfortable. They left relieved and eager to forget the experience. The attendant remained, cleaning, replacing, monitoring, resetting the space for the next anonymous need. There was an unspoken understanding here. The attendant was not invisible, but eye contact was minimal, conversation optional, respect inconsistent. Some thanked, some ignored, some treated the space as if cleanliness were automatic rather than maintained by someone standing a few feet away with gloves and patience. Work required tolerance more than strength, tolerance for mess, for disrespect, for jokes made at a distance, for the odd confessional offered to a stranger because privacy makes people strange. The attendant heard things never intended for memory. Payment was small, pride smaller still. But there was control in this role, authority over a space everyone needed eventually. The attendant decided when supplies ran out, when cleaning happened, when a space closed briefly to recover. Quiet power held with practiced neutrality. When facilities became automated and budgets tightened, this role faded. Doors cleaned themselves according to schedules. Sensors replaced judgment. People adapted quickly. The room remained. The human presence did not. Elsewhere, another quiet figure pressed buttons for a living. The lift operator did not move you upward by strength, but by reassurance. In buildings that felt new and intimidating, the operator made vertical travel feel personal. A nod, a question, a steady hand hovering near, controls that few passengers understood. Early lifts were not trusted. They jolted, they hesitated, they groaned. People stepped inside with the same tension they once reserved for boats. The operator absorbed that fear, standing calm, speaking lightly, making small talk while the cables did their work. The lift operator knew the building by intention rather than layout. Who went where and when? Offices, shops, private floors, public floors. They knew which buttons to press without asking. They anticipated rather than responded. This role required memory and discretion. You did not comment on who rode together. You did not ask why someone went to a floor they had never visited before. You observed without recording, presence without curiosity. There was irony in this job. A human hired to reassure people about a machine designed to replace effort. Efficiency still needed comfort. Progress still needed a face. As buildings grew taller and mechanisms more reliable, the role thinned. Buttons simplified. Doors closed themselves. Signs reassured passengers that everything was safe. The operator stepped aside. People learned to trust the machine without a witness. Then there was the sound of footsteps at dawn, not heavy like coal sacks, not urgent like knocker poles. Light steps, familiar roots. The paperboy moved through streets that still belonged to night, delivering information folded neatly for hands that would open it later with tea. This job required punctuality more than strength, accuracy more than speed. One missed doorstep meant a complaint. One late delivery meant a routine disrupted. News waited for no one. The paperboy learned dogs by temperament, gates by sound, which houses slept lightly, which preferred the paper slid rather than thrown. Routes were memorized physically, turns taken by habit. Darkness navigated without fear because repetition replaced it. There was a strange maturity demanded here. Children handling adult information. Headlines about conflict and disaster passed through young hands without comment. The weight of news moved silently across quiet streets. Payment was small, but independence large. Money earned directly, responsibility learned early. A sense that reliability mattered, that showing up daily shaped how others experienced the world. When news moved online, this job dissolved almost overnight. Streets grew quieter, mornings began without rustling paper, information arrived without effort. The habit of waiting faded. Inside living rooms, another quiet visitor once arrived carrying tools and patience. The television repairman stepped into domestic spaces where entertainment had failed. Screens flickered, sound vanished. Panic arrived quickly. The television was not just a device, it was an evening plan, a shared focus. When it broke, something social collapsed. The repairman restored more than function. He restored routine. This job required knowledge that lived in hands rather than manuals. Diagnosing by sound, by smell. By the way, an image bent before disappearing. Parts were replaced carefully, adjustments made slowly. Customers watched as if witnessing surgery. There was trust here. You invited a stranger into your home and believed they would fix the thing you depended on for distraction and connection. The repairman moved respectfully, shoes wiped, tools arranged neatly, work done without unnecessary noise. Payment felt justified, skill was visible, success immediate. The screen returned, relief followed, gratitude expressed openly. As devices became cheaper and sealed, this role faded. Repair replaced by replacement. Knowledge lost its value. Throwing away became easier than understanding. Late-night history notices how these jobs shared a shape. They existed at the edges of comfort, between embarrassment and relief, between fear and reassurance, between boredom and distraction. They were not central, but they were essential. None of these roles claimed importance. They did not seek attention. They functioned best when unnoticed. Their success meant forgetting them immediately. This is why they vanished so easily. Systems love roles that disappear when they work. Budgets target them first. Automation replaces them without protest because their absence does not break anything immediately, but something accumulates. Public spaces feel colder without attendance. Buildings feel lonelier without operators. Mornings feel less grounded without papers. Evenings feel thinner without repairmen who could save the night. People adapt. They always do. Self-service replaces service. Screens guide where people once did. Instructions replace interaction. efficiency improves, costs fall. Late-night history does not argue against this. Cleaner systems reduce strain, automation removes drudgery, safety improves, access expands. But it notices what was carried alongside those tasks: human buffering, the smoothing of awkward moments, the reassurance that someone was present when something small went wrong. The disappearance of these jobs did not create a crisis. It created a quiet thinning, a subtle shift towards self-management and private problem-solving. When something breaks now, it is often your responsibility alone. There is no intermediary, no shared space of resolution. You navigate menus, press buttons, wait on hold. Solutions arrive without faces. This changes how people relate to inconvenience. Frustration turns inward, patience shortens. The sense that someone else is there to help fades. The old roles absorbed this tension quietly. They stood where discomfort passed through. They caught it and released it without complaint. Late-night history lingers here because these jobs reveal something about how societies care for themselves, not through grand gestures, but through small presences positioned exactly where friction forms. When those presences vanish, the friction remains. It simply has nowhere to go. Somewhere in memory, a lift stops and a voice says, "Which floor?" A public door opens onto a space that smells clean and calm. A folded paper waits on a step. A screen flickers back to life under careful hands. These moments no longer belong to everyday life. But the night remembers them because the night notices what smooths the edges of living. The city still works. Of course it does. But it works harder now to feel the same. And in the quiet hours when movement slows and systems hum without witnesses, late-night history listens for the small jobs that once stood between people and the sharpness of daily life. They are gone. The need they served is not. The night remembers that difference.